Welcome everyone to another broadcast of The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. All past shows are podcasts. You can find them at ArtistFirst.com. We welcome your email questions and comments to dj@ArtistFirst.com. Here they are, Michael and Margaret Lyons.
And thank you very much, Z-Man, on this rainy solstice night.
That's true. It is solstice.
It is solstice and it is rainy. And I am Michael Lyons.
And I'm Margaret.
And she's Margaret. And we are dry, but there is a lot of rain out here on the veranda as we overlook the Ponderosa and survey our domain.
All the rain touches is our domain?
Yes, everything. I'm getting the look already. But I'm just living in the now.
Yes, you are.
As just as an aside, since Christopher passed away, we really were, and during the time that he was ill, not in so many words, but we began organically to live in the now. Why? Because the past meant nothing, and the future was so uncertain or horrible or both that we just pushed it away. It wasn't worth considering because we had no idea, it's not even no idea. No one has any idea what the future holds, but the future itself was so almost foreign. It's the wrong word, but it was excluded from our moment of now because the moment of now filled everything. And so organically we became living. We started living in that now moment, and you could tell you were living in the now because everything else dropped away. We wrote about this a little bit in Christopher's book. All the concerns of life, the bills, the this, the that, the party next week, the holiday, all the minutia, what people say is their life, dropped away. And we were singularly focused on the moment of now. And the moment of now required all of our attention. It required all of us, our presence, to be there. Now, it wasn't a wonderful sunshine, birds going across the clouds kind of moment of now. It was what many would consider a moment of hell. But even in the moment of suffering or of great distress, it is still the moment of now, and you become habituated to it. And then when people bring you these concerns of the past or the future, what ifs, they sound like nattering little nabobs. It's like this, and you're like, none of that matters. I'll listen to you politely, but in the moment of now, that is all stripped away, and you're right there facing reality. And as I said, you become habituated to it.
Well, you have to be grounded in that reality. How do I say this? Being in that moment of now, you strip away things that were concerning you on an everyday basis because you basically felt that these were the things that mattered. But when you're faced with life and death constantly, all that just melts away because the consideration of life and death and the quality of the soul in front of you, the state that soul happened to be in, as well as your own, becomes overriding. Because you in that moment of now, you are walking together And you want to make that really clear. You don't want to be distracted by, I don't like this. Why does this have to happen? It's not fair.
People won't like me. People will like me.
Well, those considerations fall short when you look at the intensity of life, the reality of life, and the threat that is there. The threat of his diagnosis is there, and it brings forward the awareness that life ends. You can't avoid it. Everything that you're looking at right now, if you really thought about it, was to involve you in something else so you didn't have to consider life and death. And people will be like, oh, well, that's so dramatic.
Or morbid.
But it is the truth of things. And it's only morbid if you make it morbid. Right. Reality is, it doesn't need you to approve or disapprove.
Amazingly.
Morbid is a judgment call.
I don't want to go too fast to pass this, because the thing you just said is so profound that all these other things fall short. What do they fall short of? They fall short of the reality of now. They are just reflections, chimera, ghosts, imaginations, ghosts from the past, imaginations of the future, worries, fears, anxieties, ego trips. They all fall short of what? The actual moment of reality now, which is so, it's so puissant, it's so powerful and so all-encompassing that it does not suffer fools, and it doesn't require your approval or disapproval. And this is what we're hiding from it en masse. That reality is so incredibly powerful and so incredibly subtle that it doesn't need us to approve or disapprove. It doesn't need us to give it its impetus, its power, its motive force. It just is. But it's incredibly important to realize this. It needs one thing from us. It needs us as the observer to be. Our being in the moment of now is the only valid thing. Not all the other things that fall short. The only valid thing in reality is that you be in it.
You participate.
You participate, and you just be.
Well, it's, how do I say this? You can liken it to, and it's really just similar to when you're sitting and watching a movie. The movie has no impact on anything unless there's an observer.
Yes, it requires an audience.
It requires an audience. And the movie may have been made, but you can run the projector and allow it to go through, but if there's no one to watch it, it's pointless.
Right.
And it's literally shadow play.
Yes. And we kind of jumped into this, and that's my fault, but we should say where we were starting from, which was the Tolle quote, if you wouldn't mind.
Surely. Can we go back? Let us go back.
Let us go back.
Okay.
It was my fault.
All right. This is Tolle's quote. You are not in the now. You are the now. That is your essential identity. The only thing that never changes. Life is always now. Now is consciousness, and consciousness is who you are. That's the equation. So if you look at it in a linear equation, you are the now. Life is always now. Now is consciousness, and consciousness is who you are. It's equals, 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 equals.
Right. And it's interesting you said a linear equation, but it's actually a circular equation. It's like the yin-yang in that regard. The life, or what Tolle is saying is life is reality. And reality is always now. But without consciousness being in the now, to observe the now, you break the equation. You break that circle.
Well, you break the circle if you believe you're in the now and not believing that you are the now.
Also true. Also true. And what we wrote, what we put as sort of our paraphrase of this, and it's sort of another way of looking at it, is there's the wonderful phrase from the Bible, we are not of the world, and we are in the world but not of the world. That's the quote from the Bible. And I kind of turned it around. I said, you're not of the world, and you're not in the world either. You are the world. And that's a simplification, but it teases out into the same equation. You are consciousness. Consciousness is who you are, and the now is the consciousness. And life is also always now. So you are the world, and the world is now. Holy also mentioned, not in this quote, but that, where does the world exist? Well, it exists within you. You carry around with you a universe. You, I'm gesturing towards Margaret and to everyone else, we all carry around within ourselves a universe. There's an objective reality, but the universe we carry around inside of ourselves is our consciousness observation. Our consciousness is, it's hard to say, our consciousness is observation of the universe. You cannot put your finger on your consciousness. There's no one part of your body or your mind or anything that can be pointed to and say, oh, there's the consciousness. And if I pluck it out, it's gone. Nor can you find the universe except within yourself. There's no part of you that can touch the universe. It is your mind, it is your consciousness that is the interface between reality and the being that is you. Now, and those two things are two things. One doesn't exist without the other, like the yin-yang. They are two and they are one, and they have something of each other in them. It's a very profound analogy for consciousness.
Consciousness in general, that being state, which we are born into the minute we open our eyes. We have no name for it. We have no words for it when you are first born. You just open your eyes and take your first breath. And you are being in that moment. And the simplicity and the joy and the terror and the awesomeness of it all hits you in that moment. And that's who we are. In that moment of now, we take a breath and we observe, take in what is all around us. And at that point, the processing begins. How to interpret what is going on around you. And it's fascinating because in those moments when there are no words, you are still interpreting the information that you're getting. You are still trying to put things in some kind of semblance of order because that is your nature. Your nature is not chaos. Your nature needs to have a structure in which to reach out from to begin to experience what's going on in that moment. And I always wonder, is the baby remembering everything that's going on? Like, oh no, I shouldn't do that because then something is going to happen. Or is it just like, okay, I'm just trying to figure out how to move this. And what is this sensation? And then suddenly it realizes that it's its own hand that it's moving. It's just the surprise. It's constant surprises. I still remember when one of the kids just wound up smacking itself in the head with its own hand and looking around like, who did that? It's like, wait a minute, you're doing that to yourself. The experience, time and time and time again. That purity of experience is what we all yearn for again, without all the preconceived almost programming that everything else around you wants to give you. It's a purity of consciousness that is not really too concerned with anybody else's opinion.
No, exactly. But to pull it back, I love what you just said. We are experiential beings.
Mm-hmm.
We take our first breath, or we have our first experiences. I would even say prior to the first breath, but the first experiences are limited in the sense that you're within another's body. But the first experiential events are had in a wordless, thoughtless purity, yet the experiences occur.
Right.
And your being state, your consciousness, exactly that. It does impose order. Reality is in and of itself is not ordered. It has an order, but it is essentially chaotic. And there's a lot of theory we could go into about how order arises out of chaos. But the clockwork of reality, it lies upon, in essence, a chaotic quantum framework, which is imperceptible. We meet that reality. Our consciousnesses also are one, in essence, an interface, if you will, through which this quantum reality, through which consciousness experiences this quantum reality and imposes upon it a certain degree of order. Even before all the things which we now are using to try and describe these experiences, the words and the gestures and all these other layers of filters of ways of expressing ourselves, are all useful tools, almost unnoticed because we've become so comfortable with them. The more comfortable you are with your tools, the less they get in your way, the more they allow you to do. But the essential experiential consciousness lies at the base of them all. You need nothing. You need no words, no thoughts, no likes, no dislikes, nothing, no body in order to be a consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
That consciousness, using its own ability to interface with what is an essentially chaotic quantum reality, uses a vehicle, a form. Totally talks of forms all the time, but we in consciousness are formless. All of us are formless. The part of you which experiences is formless. In form, it is given the opportunity to do many more things, many more experiential things, to have a way of, in essence, interacting. So form is a wrapping of consciousness in the fabric of quantum reality. You wrap yourself, your essential self, your being, in form. Form is a piece of creation, a piece of the universe. It is consciousness wrapped within a quantum reality and then experientially imposing a certain degree of order upon it. However, you can see very clearly, if you just think of it that way, that consciousness is wrapped in form, that consciousness must be formless. Because if it arises from form, it is essentially chaotic and unable to observe. If the reality could observe itself, it would not need an observer. It cannot. It doesn't. It isn't even an it. Reality just is an is. Not an it. Not an object. It is an is. It is a reality. Reality is a term. It's a verb as well as a noun. Reality is. It's a verb of being. It just is. It really is beyond understanding.
Reality is the medium of being.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
And you enwrap yourself, you incarnate, if you will, but you enwrap yourself, your consciousness, within form to have an experiential interface. So the first breath, the moment of incarnation, which might be a little bit before that, the moment of incarnation is really the wrapping of consciousness in form. We have a particular form in the way that consciousness is enwrapped within it, yet the form matters little. Why? Your form initially is rather helpless, and lastly is rather helpless, and in between it can do some things and can't do other things. So you are limited when you are enwrapped in form. But your consciousness is always, and we also know this, is that's where the separation comes. Your consciousness is always boundless. It can exist beyond form, without form, and we know that. We understand that at that level because we can interact in a formless way with another consciousness. You realize that form means nothing, because if form meant everything, your relationship with anyone else would be chaotic because their form keeps changing. Gosh, you have a different color. I don't even recognize. What are you? You're a thing. You would have the inability to have a relationship with form, because form is forever changing. You can't have a relationship with form, because if you weren't intimately connected to it every millisecond of your existence, you would not be able to understand its next new shape. But you don't have a relationship with form. You have a relationship with the being, and you recognize the being that you have a relationship with, whether that being is 2 years old or 90 years old. And you recognize the relationship with the being even if they have no longer incarnate in form. You still recognize a relationship with something which is discarnate and formless. And you go, yeah, of course. Of course I have a relationship with these people who are no longer here. They're my friends, my lovers, my parents, whomever. But isn't that silly? They're not here. There's no form. It's not silly. It's essential. But if you were truly to say that you have a relationship with the universe and with form, it would be a meaningless null to say I have a relationship with something which is not here. And the universe would say, well, yeah, like, right. But you know you do.
You have a relationship with consciousness. You do not have relationships with things, with forms. And form also includes concepts, thought concepts.
Mm.
Because people, they dedicate themselves to concepts, not realizing that it's not a real relationship. And that can be very disturbing to a lot of people because they're looking for, as they say, why am I alive? I must have a meaning.
Mm.
You have a meaning because you are the observer of life. There is no other that can see from your unique perspective life.
There's so much in there, but exactly right. There is an abstraction of form, which the ego loves to have a relationship with, and that's a distracting thing. The abstraction becomes a distraction,
Mm-hmm.
and an absorption, and maybe sometimes an obsession. But you realize, at some level, this is why people have these bucket lists, or they have these midlife crises. You realize at some level that this is void, that it is not enough, that it's not, that to define oneself and to identify with things which are either form or concepts, abstractions of form, is void, or it's unsatisfying. That's probably the best word. Unsatisfying, and consciousness knows this at a visceral level, and it is oftentimes expressed as, well, what's the purpose of life? Why am I here? I have to find meaning. I have to find myself. Totally laughs every time he says that. Where are you that you have to find? Who are the people that have to find you? It's like, yes. There's no finding yourself because you are you. You are consciousness. But yet the abstraction of form and identification with form and with abstraction kind of gives you this odd sort of schizophrenia of who am I, and then the observer. It sort of fades into the background. Still there, has to be there, and these forms fight it out in your near field. I'm this, I'm that. I could be this. I need this meeting. I need these things. Da 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 da. And it's all distraction. And to circle back to the beginning of our conversation, when something comes in which forces you, because you don't have a real choice, to toss all those things to the side, and then you realize that even with all those things gone, all those abstractions and distractions muted and silent, with a mind which no longer has any answers, you still are there in the moment of reality. And if you're there for any length of time, you understand. You start to say, well, this is who I am. This is who I really am.
Right.
A being in reality, with a relationship to another being in reality.
Well, when you are in that kind of a moment where things bring you up to the flow of life and the fact that this ends, you realize that people around you are continually trying to find a way not to look at it.
Mm.
And that's one of the reasons why you could feel this underlying fear whenever they were talking to you as a parent of a child diagnosed with cancer. The fear was palpable to me because they're asking questions basically based on the fact that they're afraid. And unless you acknowledge that fear, it will run your life. Every decision you make is based on the subliminal fear of something really bad could happen and we could die. So being able to look at that and acknowledge, I mean, that is the beginning, to acknowledge that I am observing the part that is fearful.
I think in another, totally says you have to become a friend to your fear or to your experiences, good or bad. They have to become. They are
acknowledged.
Acknowledged, exactly.
They have to be acknowledged within your field of being. The minute you reject it, you're rejecting a part of yourself. And then that's when trouble starts.
Well, indeed. And we've been going pretty deep. So, let's stop with the trouble. We'll take a little break. We'll go back to the studio, and we'll come back from the world in about 3 minutes.
The wait is over. First Blood, Book 2 of the Blood series is out. Your favorite bad boy thief Dev is back, and the beautiful and deadly Trey is right there with him. She is sharp, sexy, and full of surprises. Their adventures continue as a new power arises to threaten the world. The heart of creation is under attack, and time is definitely not on their side as they battle against their enemies' undead hordes. Can they unlock the hidden power that can defeat him, or will his forces draw first blood? Get all 3 installments in the series. Book 0, It's in the Blood. Book 1, Destroyer's Blood, and the new release, Book 2, First Blood, today. Available in ebook and paperback format on Amazon, Kobo, Apple, and most other fine e-tailers. The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed is the latest book from Michael Lyons, the award-winning author of There is a Reaper. Featuring 13 original stories, this wide-ranging collection has everything. Forbidden love, gods versus demigods, weird invading aliens, sexy seductive artificial intelligence, and unusual passion between the living and the dead. All set amidst fantastic worlds of pain and loss and boundless joy. From the sublime to the macabre to the bittersweet, The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed will leave you breathless with laughter, brimming with tears, trembling with suspense. Available now on Amazon.com, Google Play, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere.
Moonstones and murder. Real murderers need a heart of stone. Meet Maggie and Mike Heartstone, parents of twin boys, entrepreneurs, and now empty nesters. Mike is retired, not by choice, from his position as chief of police in the picturesque resort town of Hamilton. And now his wife Maggie and her shop, the Cozy Crystal, are their only source of income. When a mysterious killing interrupts Hamilton's famous Springfield Park rock show, the townsfolk, the Cozy Crystal, and their lives are rocked to the core. Can Mike and Maggie figure out who is behind the murderous deeds before the town comes crashing down around them? A touch of romance, a little mayhem, and a whole lot of suspense, along with plenty of comedy and thrills galore. Get your crystal magnifying glass out. It's time for some moonstones and murder. Available on Amazon, Apple, Kobo, and other fine e-tailers in ebook and paperback. Out soon on Audible. Get your copy today.
Hello, this is Highway 59 recording artist Randy Moore, and you are listening to the ArtistFirst Radio Network.
Rick Riordan fans, love mythology with plenty of action and humor? Destroyer's Blood is for you. The new fantasy novel by award-winning author Michael Lyons is book 1 of the adventures of Dev Kalian, the Blood series. Follow Dev and his magic sword Betrayer as they are suddenly attacked and forced to return to Olympus to fight in a war they want no part in. The world of men and gods is about to be destroyed by Zeus's ancient foe, and only Dev and Trey can stop him. The conflict never stops, and the amazing twist will have you on the edge of your seat. Act now while the ebook is on sale for only 99 cents. Destroyer's Blood is available on Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere. And while you're there, get the free prequel, It's in the Blood, available for a limited time.
Hi, this is Amanda Gray. Check out my new book, Glimpses of Grace in Georgia, available on Westbow Press Bookstore, Barnes & Noble, and Amazon. More information can be found at my website, www.glimpsesofgraceingeorgia.com, and you are listening to the ArtistFirst Radio Network.
There is a Reaper is the story of 5-year-old Christopher Aaron and his life-changing struggle with leukemia. Winner of both the Indie Bragg Medallion as well as the reader's favorite silver medal for memoir, There is a Reaper has more than 100 Amazon book reviews and a 5-star rating. It has been described as life-changing, spiritual, a must-read. Just released on Audible and iTunes, this memoir is also available in paperback and on Amazon Kindle for only 99 cents. Get your copy of this life-changing memoir today.
Thanks for joining us on The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. Back to your hosts, Michael and Margaret Lyons.
Thank you very much, Z-Man. And we are back from the world. And we really, one of these days, we're just going to have to broadcast our whole conversation during the breaks because we have some awesome conversations during the breaks. Anyway, but this is also an awesome conversation. I think it's appropriate to have it on Solstice because in many ways people have treated celestial events over the many centuries and thousands of years as moments of now. And I think ancient cultures, especially those without cable TV and the internet, would be more in connection with reality. And by that I mean the form of reality. When you have to deal with reality at an existential level, you don't have, a wonderful little switch that you turn on the wall that puts lights on. You don't have a switch to turn on the wall on the stove that turns on the fire so you can cook, et cetera, et cetera. All the conveniences. You have to deal with reality. You have to know that this season coming needs to be prepared for, or this particular day is going to be so cold or so hot, and you need to understand the reality that you're living in. It's not necessarily that you're in a being state the way we're talking about, but your being and your existence is much more connected to having to survive, and that keeps you in a way grounded. It keeps you in a way grounded in the same way that an existential threat of any type does. It puts aside that which is less important and makes you live in the now. Today, now, we have to eat. Today, now, we have to be warm. Today, now, we have to do something. And then these celestial events, the solstice, for argument's sake, were moments to experience now at that level. The sun should, in essence, rise in this particular spot, and we would know that this would be the longest day, that the light would be with us all, from this point, and we would have a celebration of life. Similarly with other events. So the connection to reality at that level, and it was basically a kind of a spiritual level, is another vehicle for consciousness through incarnation in form to realize that it's being in the now. Your experiential way of getting to the now is indeterminate. There's too many ways to count to be in the experience of now. But the idea is when you're there, it all has this common theme. You are in the moment. And right. I say not in the moment because in is what Tolle is saying you're not. You are the moment. You and the moment are intimately connected, and you are aware of your intimate connection to the moment of being, which is now. So there's an important word there, aware. Aware of consciousness is consciousness being conscious of being conscious. It sounds like a tautology, but it's actually an important thing. Awareness means you are aware that you are aware. You are conscious of being conscious. And this essential observation of your own beingness is also important. You observe the world, you are the world, and you know that you are the world. You are what you are. You are you. You are the world. It sounds like a John Lennon song, sort of. But it's important to have that awareness.
The intrinsic state of awareness, as I said, I'm going to go back to the example given where you're a newborn and you open your eyes and you take your first breath. You are in awareness in that moment, and it's pure awareness. There are many sounds and impulses coming in. Feeling temperature for the first time, warmth and cold, the smells, the light, trying to figure out how to work your eyeballs. Because you open your eyes and you're like, okay, everybody assumes that you can see in that moment, but it's like foggy until you figure out how to use your eyes. That presence is what we're speaking of. The awareness rises from that presence. And then the interactions begin. And the interactions are, as we said, you're taking in all these impulses, this data. How are you beginning to process it? And again, we go back to understanding that your mind is beginning to organize things in a certain way. Beginning to understand things. And that's why, let's face it, people have always wondered why babies sleep a lot. Well, when you are so present like that, it's exhausting. You're being swept along in the moment of now to the point where you exhaust yourself in a matter of minutes. When was the last time you ever experienced that? Because that is what the moment of now is supposed to be. Every moment that you are present, it is almost overwhelming the amount of information that comes in.
Very true.
So, what's distracting you? When was the last time you have had an experience or can recall an experience like that where you were so aware and alive and everything was on and then you got super tired? When was the last time that happened?
Well, and the tiredness, if you will, comes from this. There is a certain energy in the moment of now, and there is a certain energy in being in the moment. To keep yourself in the moment of now requires a certain, let's call it a balancing act. You can't hold on to anything that is passing. You can't let your thoughts run down into the past. You can't let your thoughts even run into the future. You have to be in the moment. It can be exhausting in essence, because that being state, if you don't again habituate yourself to it, become energized in the moment of now, connected to the energy of now, it can it can, as you said, exhaust you. You see, you bring up infants who have to, as you say, sleep a lot. They're taking in so much, and they have no filter. The filters that we put up in front of our existence are there in some ways, well, more than just some ways. They're there. They're created as barriers and protections, and then they're also created as all kinds of distractions and psychoses and neuroses and many other things as well. But the initial ones, these filters that people put up in front of things, are to in essence, stave off what is reality so that they can think about it. Don't tell me too much. I've got to think about it. I want to see if I like it or I don't like it. So I have to kind of shut my eyes and hide behind my wall of filters and say, do I like this? Do I like this? This is the ego. This is the mind trying to marshal and to look into as small a keyhole as possible in order to experience reality at the rate that it can actually think about it.
That's where the balancing point comes in. That's what you're referencing, because in the moment of now, there is no such thing as balancing. Balancing is the ego trying to hang on to what's unfolding in front of it.
Well, that's what I'm trying to say. That's why people get exhausted, is that they're trying to, instead of being and being in the energy in the moment of now, just being and letting it go along, not trying to...
Okay, so what you're saying is you're describing what the mind is actually, or the ego is actually doing in order to try to take in, process, and compensate for the unfolding of the moment.
Right.
This is the main reason why the exhaustion rises.
Exactly. So if you're truly in the moment of now, there's no such thing as an exhaustion, if you will. You are consciousness. Consciousness doesn't tire. When your form has to rest or to eat or to do any of these things, your consciousness requires nothing. You can't say, well, this part of my consciousness is hungry. No, it just is. It's just a consciousness. Your form requires these things. Your thoughts take your energies. Your cats are distracting and very needy. These kinds of things are all in form, in thought, in an aspect of consciousness or impinging upon consciousness, but they are not consciousness. And if you are able to completely, and this is an ideal, completely put yourself into the now, you don't require anything. It's like those gurus or the enlightened monks who go into a meditative state and they are not eating, they're not drinking, they're not doing anything, and their form wastes away, but their consciousness just is. This is an asceticism denying the needs of the body in order to enforce or to reinforce the fact that consciousness is not form. To in essence increase the separation or delineate the separation of form from actual being.
Everyone's got to find their way.
Yeah.
And there have been these patterns or disciplines in order to try to make it very clear to the individual what is form and what is not. Mm. But each person's got to figure out their own way of doing it. These particular teachings or philosophies are very good for trying to quiet the mental aspect of your mind. But there are many different ways to step into the moment of being. And it is something that you cannot force yourself into. Because that was always a question that many of the people who do the meditation to come to enlightenment, they feel as they have to reach enlightenment. And the truth is, it's with you, but you can't see it or embrace it because you are solidly in the world of form and ego. To be able to understand that you can make the transition out of ego into being without destroying ego. People believe that, well, I have to destroy the ego, just like they're trying to do the ascetic practices to almost destroy the body. It's like, no, even those are illusions. It is within you. What is needed is to find out why or what is in your way from being completely in the moment of now. And do you actually want to take that path? Because some people are very enamored of form, very comfortable in the way they think and the way they feel and the way they respond. Because they say it is their world, and you have no right to tell me how my world should be.
Well, and you mentioned the comfortableness. That's exactly it. When people say, well, I'm on my journey to enlightenment and I have all these obstacles in my way, the obstacles are generally of your own making. They're the comfortableness you have with thought, how comfortable you are with your form, with your identity in these things. And it is the wake-up call. It's the lightning bolt of illumination, if you will, which gets you to the awareness that these things are all obstacles, that the realization of who you are requires nothing. You can become enlightened in that instant and realize that consciousness in and of itself doesn't need to be found. It was always there. What you're really doing is unearthing or stripping away the things that you've piled upon it. The ego forms and the constructs, the I am this and I am that, and I like this and I like that. Every one of those is an ego form and a construct. And then you'll have little arguments between your ego forms. Oh, I shouldn't like this. I should like that. I want to do this. I shouldn't do that. Da, da, da. And who's talking to who here? Well, they're the voices in my head. Yes, well, you sound like a schizophrenic. In many ways, all these voices are just little, what is it totally, the pain body or the ego constructs. These are all pieces of you talking to you about the things that you don't like about you.
Right. Right. Well, I believe that, frankly, you know how in Christianity that we are taught that you have to surrender yourself completely to God? And that is the beginning point. You've got to surrender your ego to something far greater than yourself. So, and when I say far greater than yourself, the self is the ego self.
Right.
The ego, the mind, can't understand itself to start with. I don't know what illusion people think they're going under, but you don't understand you from the get-go.
Well, right. But the ego, the conceit is that the ego can understand the ego, right?
Correct. The conceit is that the ego can understand itself.
Right. Or it's trying to find itself.
Well, and the truth of it, but look at that as a baseline truth, that is false. The ego cannot understand itself. And if you embrace that, you sit there and you go, well, what the heck have I been doing all my life?
Exactly.
Okay? So coming to the point of realizing that the surrender of yourself, or in the Bible it's surrender your life, is the first step.
Right, and it is the step into the greater awareness of what your self really is. The surrendering that you're. See, again, you'd say, well, you have to. You're telling me I have to destroy the ego. No, you have to understand that you were never the ego. That the ego is nothing more than an illusion, and what you're surrendering is the energy that you're putting into the illusion. And then you can say, yes, well, you can do all the things from the outside. You can look exactly the same. You can do all the things that you're doing, all the accomplishments, all those things. It's the awareness to realize that that is not you. That is just something in your being that is part of what happened. Go ahead.
It is your consciousness focus.
Yes.
And your focus is no longer set on ego. Your focus is on now. When you realize that everything that you've been doing and cataloging all your experiences is an ego construct.
Right.
And that is not who you are. Your life force is not in your ego construct. And if you can embrace that and realize that now, which is something that you have always had, from the moment you were born, is something that you must return back to.
Or become aware of, because you never went away from it, if you will.
Your focus has got to come back to.
Right. Right. And that people throw up these tremendous barriers. Oh, how can I? In some basic way, it's so easy it becomes hard, if you will. People say, well, it can't be just that. It has to be much, much more complicated than that. You know, there's got to be a journey. I've got to pay my dues. I've got to do these things. I have to have the enlightenment. I have to have the medals and the robes and all that. No, none of that. And when you're in the cancer wards, you get a taste of it. And if you understand where you are there and you bring it forward into the next moment of now and realize that it's just consciousness's relationship to consciousnesses, it gets you the clue. And I'm getting a clue right now that this is the end of our hour. So we're gonna have to in consciousness say that I am Michael Lyons.
And I am Margaret, and thank you for listening.